Wednesday, the middle of the week, and yours truly, Bob McCown, along with John Shannon. If you are experiencing some technical difficulties, so are we, and we apologize for.
No. So are you. The rest of us are fine. You are having the technical difficulties.
That's accurate. I confess.
Okay. Just so we're clear.
Our friend Brian Burke joins us, the new president of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Well, first of all, congratulations. When guys like you venture into the media at some point in your career, I would say the odds of getting another job are greatly limited. Were you surprised when you got the call from Pittsburgh?
Yes, I was, because I thought that, that window might have closed. I did get offered a job as president of hockey operations with another team 2 years ago, but I turned it down, and I was content doing what I was doing. I liked working for Sportsnet. I liked living in Toronto. I liked sleeping in my own bed. But Pittsburgh is a very different animal from a lot of other teams in terms of ownership and the winning culture and the physical plant here. The rink and the practice rink are the best in the league. So it was just too good a situation to pass up.
When do your competitive juices, when did they start flowing? Because we all know the difference between regular people and guys that continue to stay in hockey is their desire to compete. When did that start to come back for you, Brian?
Well, immediately. But what happened was David Morehouse is my boss here. He's the CEO. And he was talking to me about candidates for the GM job. And I was not about me. I was talking to him about John Smith and Joe Doyle and these different guys. Here's their strengths, here's their weaknesses. And that night he was talking to Mario, and Mario said, "How come you know so much about these guys, these candidates?" And he said, "Well, I've been talking to Brian Burke." And Mario said, "Burke, why aren't we talking to him?" So that next thing you know, they were talking to me the next day. And right away, the competitive juices started flowing, thinking, not sure I'm going to do it. I asked someone to sleep on it. But right away, it took 5 years off my life.
When did you start looking at the roster? Right that moment?
Yeah, as soon as I got off the phone with David.
And so you see 71, you see 87, you see 58, and you say, I'm in.
Yeah, there's some pretty good pieces on the chessboard here. Obviously, we got some holes, but starting with those guys on the chessboard is pretty unique.
Well, you take over the job as president, but a general manager is in place now, along with you, also new to this particular job. How would you define your relationship with him, and who ultimately will make the decisions regarding the hockey team?
Well, I think first off, I'm president of hockey operations, Bob. I know you know that, but to make sure anyone watching or listening, it's president of hockey operations. I'm not president of the team. I'm not going to run the business. When I was president of the Vancouver Canucks, I ran the hockey team and I ran the business, but this is different. So the deal with Ron Hextall is, you say who will make the ultimate decision. That's the question everyone asks, but it's the same thing. When I got hired by the late, great King in Calgary, he said, look at it this way. Imagine that you and the GM are business partners. You're not going to walk into your business partner's office and say, I just traded this guy, or I'm taking the next month off on holidays. So you're going to work that out and collaborate on it before it gets to a veto point. So that's what I would say. And it worked great with Brad Treliving, and I think it's going to work great with Hexie.
Has your attitude changed about the business, Brian, from the time, let's say, when you started as president and general manager in Vancouver? Do you think you've changed?
I don't know if I've changed. The business model's changed for sure. Hopefully I'm a little wiser as I get older. I don't know if that's true. I always say to my kids, you're only young once, but you can always be immature. And so, but I hope I'm wiser. The business model's changed. The way people want to receive the games, watch them on tablets and iPhones, the number of games that fans want to go to, they want partial season tickets and packs, and it's very different than when I started. And we did a survey when I was with the Leafs, and we found out the first survey indicated that our average season ticket holder went to 6 games a year. Mm-hmm. And Richard Petty and I said, well, that can't be right. So we did a second survey with some of our most loyal fans. And it turned out it was 8 games a year out of 41. So the tickets, because they're expensive, because people have other things to do. A guy will buy 2 tickets and then divide them up among his 6 buddies, right? So, and in Calgary, it's very different. The average season ticket holder went to 30 games. And here I'm guessing it's somewhere in between. So the business model's changed, but the game's the same.
You touched on family, and those of us that know you know that family is so important. Even, you know, I remember when your time in Anaheim, you were flying back to Boston every second week, I believe it was, and to be with family. But you've left teenage daughters in Toronto to take this job. How difficult was that?
Well, it's an hour flight once the border opens up, but right now it's going to be difficult. So I drove down. I'm going to stay here for at least a month. I talked to my daughters about that. They understand. And until the border restrictions ease in terms of quarantine, it will be difficult. But I'm an optimist. I believe with the vaccine and with the effect that COVID's coming down all over North America, I think at some point you'll see the border restrictions relax. It won't be totally opened up, but the quarantine part of it, I think, will be reduced.
Was it
So
a unanimous
intended-
vote on the family that you take this job?
Yeah, and it's the older kids too, and they understand. So I told my daughters, like, I'm going away for a month. I've never been away from them for a month, I don't think. And you're right, the whole time in Vancouver, starting when I went back there in '98, and the whole time in Anaheim, it's 11 years total. I commuted back and forth to Boston every other weekend, and during the school year, and then the summertime we take vacations as a family and divide up the summer. But I have no intention of changing that, and the Penguins are in full support.
Forgive me for not knowing this, but what is the situation with fans in the arena in Pittsburgh? Are there any?
Right now, they're allowed 500 people inclusive total in the building. That includes the players, the officials, coaches, and hockey ops people. And so they're allowing in a certain number of healthcare workers and season ticket holders and sponsors up to 500. So it's all at the suite level, nobody in the seats. But they're talking to the city. They hope to have at least 25% very soon, and maybe more.
What is the status of, as best you know, I know you've only been there a few days, and I'm sure it's not at the top of your priority list, but what do you know of the status of COVID in the state of Pennsylvania, and more specifically in Pittsburgh?
Well, in Pittsburgh, the restaurants are open and the bars are open, 25% capacity. People expect that to increase to 50%. They're practicing social distancing and wearing masks, but they are open for business. You can go out for dinner here. And they anticipate it'll be opening further in the next little bit.
So Brian, have you addressed the team? I mean, with COVID, it's difficult to make sure that people can get into areas. Have you and Ron, and I want to make sure we include Ron in a lot of this because you're a partnership. Have you and Ron been able to sit and address the team in person?
No, the league put in new COVID restrictions as of Sunday, the day I drove down. And the head coach is only allowed to meet with the players for up to 3 minutes. And so everything else is done virtually. All the power play meetings, penalty kill meetings, they're not allowed to be done in person. They took out the glass behind the benches. You saw that. So no, I cannot address the team. Ron cannot address the team. And we are taking the NHL rules very seriously. So I took my mask off right before we started.
So how do you talk to the players?
I haven't yet. I met 2.
So as I understand, you did talk to Sydney?
I talked to Sid on the phone. I haven't seen him in person.
Okay.
But I bumped into Cappy coming in, Kasperi Kapanen coming in for testing yesterday. And I met another player when I was picking up my packaged food. They actually make the food and hand it to you in a package, and you go back in your office and eat. It's very foreign to me.
You'll forgive me if I find that humorous, Burke, but a bunch of questions about where you go and a little bit about how you adjust, if at all. And we'll do that in a second when the podcast continues. We're with Brian Burke, the new president of the Pittsburgh Penguins. When you came to Toronto, Berkey, you used a word that is singularly attached to you and probably nobody else. I suspect you know what that word is. Starts with a T. You want to take a shot?
Tea party?
Yeah, that's it. That was it. That was it. Tea party.
No,
Tea party.
truculence.
Truculence.
Yep.
And that was kind of your message. I don't want to mischaracterize it, but you wanted a team that was truculent. Can you still do that in the NHL? It's not that many years ago, but it may seem like a lifetime to somebody like you. How do you build this team?
Well, first off, the game has changed. So I go back, what is it now, 07. So is that 14 years? 14 years ago, we won a cup in Anaheim with a straight top six, bottom six formula. And that formula is obsolete now. And you have to adapt as the game changes. The game has become faster. Fighting is way less of an issue or a tactic. And so you have to adapt as a GM. And I'm not the GM of this team, but as you have your philosophy of building your team. But I would note that the three last Stanley Cup champions were all teams that played big, truculent, ugly hockey, highly skilled, but big and ugly. And I still want that to be part of our makeup here, and it's not right now.
How do you change that if you do not change the roster? And I'm not suggesting you won't, but can you take a group that has played one way for an extended period of time and had some success and insert a different philosophy?
Well, I think first off, Ron Hextall is the GM, and he shares my view. I think everyone agrees that if you've got two teams of equal ability and one is bigger, the bigger team is going to prevail. You look at the last three Stanley Cup champions, all big teams, all designed for playoff wear and tear. You look at Tampa, they couldn't get over the hump until they added some grit to their lineup. So I don't think it's Brian Burke's view on life. I think it's the NHL's view on life. Pittsburgh was the last team to win 2 cups back to back, and the last team to win without that type of a team. They were more purely skilled, speed, great goaltending. So we have to find a blend between those, I think, to be competitive.
But you can't take a chicken and turn it into a duck. And that's probably a bad analogy, but I hope I know you know what I mean. Your team has a certain character by design and by genetics. So other than making trades, can you turn your team into a more physical entity?
No, you'd have to change some of the personnel out. No question about it. There have to be personnel changes here to get to the type of game that Hexie and I want to play. But also, you got to be careful, like you say. Now, mind you, it was 3 years ago when we won our last cup here. But the fact of the matter is, like you say, they won back-to-back cups. They're the last team to do it since, I think, Detroit way back. And it was a speed formula, speed and skill. So that is our DNA. I think we have to splice in some different DNA.
The other thing, Brian, and you touched on it a little bit, was the way the game is played. And when you look at the way the Blues won the cup when they won the cup in Tampa, was the amount of depth that these teams have. And there's not much different between maybe line 2 and line 4. And depth becomes such a positive part of a winning formula, doesn't it?
Well, it's a war of attrition. To play 4 playoff series, I mean, I can tell you in Anaheim, we used, I think, from February 1st till we won the cup, I think we used 9 or 10 different defensemen. So you need depth, and depth is essential if you're going to win, because you're going to get banged up. And if guys are banged up and you put someone in that's a subpar player, obviously you weaken your lineup. But you have to put someone in who can tread water at least and not get scored on. So to me, that's exactly right. We need depth. We need to get a little bit bigger, I think. But I'm not complaining about the pieces I'm starting with either.
How much are you handicapped by the cap? I assume Pittsburgh is at or near the top.
Yep.
Have room?
Nope.
Not very much.
Well, I mean, we talk about this all the time, though, Berkey. I assume that is a real life problem. Or is it a problem that is circumventable?
It's not circumventable. It's a real life problem. But the irony is it's a real life problem for a lot of teams that haven't won a thing. We've got a cap issue, but we got 2 rings too. I don't have them. I say the Penguins do.
Understand.
And so we should be in cap trouble because we've had success. Been in the playoffs, I think 9 straight years or something, some crazy stat. This organization has been extremely successful. So yeah, we got cap issues. What's interesting is there's a whole bunch of teams with cap issues that haven't won squat.
So have you and Ron created for want of a better word, a timeline yet? I mean, I assume you still want to make the playoffs this year, even though right now you're out of the playoffs.
Yes.
Is there a timeline? Is there a timeline?
Well, the timeline, John, would be, first off, you don't know your team until you know your team, until you've spent time with them. So if you'd asked me a week ago, what about who's the third line right wing in Pittsburgh? I could have told you, because we keep those charts. I could have told you something about the player, what he does, how he plays, where he went to school. But you don't know your team until you know your team, and you don't know your team until you spend time with them. So you watch them practice, you watch them travel, you see who's early on the ice, you see who's early on the bus, who's early on the plane, how are they dressed, what's their body English, how do they interact with teammates? And you get a better picture. Instead of a snapshot of the player, you get a portrait of the player. And then you begin to say, okay, this guy we want to keep around, this guy we can do without.
Now, I saw you on TV on Sunday. You were in your regular spot, wearing your regular clothes. Your job as a broadcaster was to describe stuff. Can you describe the emotion that you had as you walked into that box and looked down on the ice and said, "Hey, Ron, that's our team"?
Yeah, it's really, I'm not a sentimental guy, except with my family, but yeah, I remember thinking back to my first game sitting next to Pat Quinn as an assistant GM way back in 1987. I felt the same thrill, which is, okay, we've got this group. How do we win another championship? And I felt the same thrill. I enjoyed broadcasting very much, and I thought it was going to be what I did for the rest of my life. But this chance to get back, and I drove down here on Sunday for the game, and Thursday night was my daughter's birthday, and so Jennifer, my ex, came over because we get along very well, and we're watching the first game that I got to watch on TV. And I'm yelling at the TV, and both my daughters said, "Well, you're back in the job, Dad." When you're a broadcaster, you don't yell at the TV, right? You don't. If they call a penalty you don't like, you don't yell at the TV. So I was yelling at the TV, and both my daughters said, "Well, Dad's back in the saddle."
So you and I have had a chance to spend some time together socially, besides working on air together for a period of time. I don't recall any moment, Burkey, where you pined over being out of the executive role in hockey. And as you said, I didn't think you felt as though there was obviously another chapter in that book. Did you have second thoughts when the opportunity was presented, wondering whether you should go back down that road again? Or did you react instantly? Did those juices just kick in right away?
Well, the juices kicked in right away, but I slept on it too. Like Sportsnet was a great opportunity for me. They were great to me. And I enjoyed the job, and I enjoyed the lifestyle. Toronto's a great city. I'm going to keep my house there. And I enjoyed what I was doing. I liked the no travel. And I thought, okay, this is it. And I didn't think I'd get another opportunity. It's just you get to a certain point and you think, okay, you look at the GMs that were hired, the last bunch of GMs that were hired were all young guys. And I had my turn. And so I said, okay, it's not my turn. So did I pine for it? No. Did I miss it some days? Yeah, I did. And some travel is exciting and exhilarating, and winning and losing is exciting and exhilarating and despondent making. So no, there were days where I'd say, geez, I would talk to a GM and he'd say, "Oh, I'm at the airport going to watch our farm team play," and I'd think, I wish I was doing that. But not that many days, because I really enjoyed what I was doing. But this is Pittsburgh. It's a perfect storm. there's a half dozen franchises that would be very hard to say no to because of ownership is so strong, because of winning culture, because it's close to Toronto, close to my daughters, because the city's a great city. Like Pittsburgh checks a lot of boxes. So, and John, I think you've probably been part of this. When GMs sit around and drink beer and talk about stuff, and they talk about the perfect job, you know, they say, oh, I had a great job here in this place. It was, ownership was great, city was great, fan base was great. It's a great sports town. Travel was good. And guys talk about spots like Boston, you know, like Pittsburgh, and say that's a dream job. Like you look at the ownership here, they're fantastic. And the organization has a winning culture. Like I'm at the practice right now, the physical facilities are unbelievable. There's not one thing that I have to fix or change here. The big rink's great, the practice rink's great, the medical clinic that's attached to the practice rink is fantastic. Ownership's great, winning tradition. So great city, great sports fans. It's one of the best sports towns in America. I think the best, but it's one of them.
Well, I'll tell you what, the practice facility you're at, and I'm not telling you, I'm telling the people that are listening, is in a little town called Cranberry, about 10 miles north of Pittsburgh. I don't think you can find a better facility in professional sports than what they've done north of the city there. It makes it easy. It's light, and then the arena downtown is state of the art as well. And for a city the size of Pittsburgh to know that they have the stadiums that they have built and the facilities they have built, the sports fans in Western Pennsylvania are truly in the elite in North America, I think.
Yeah, and when you evaluate a job, you look at it, you say, okay, how quickly can we win here? And people might say it's going to be a rebuilding job, this, that. I've never looked at a hill and said that hill's too high to climb. And if you do look at a hill and you say that hill's too tall to climb, you probably shouldn't be in this line of work. So that's number one. Number two is I look at, he's coming back to the same things. The ownership group, Mario Lemieux and Ron Burkle, they're excellent people. They're smart. They've done a great job. They're good to work for. David Morehouse is my boss. I've been friends with him and admired him for 15 years, as long as I've known him. Again, facilities, city, winning culture, close to Toronto. It checks all the boxes for me. And there are very few teams that would do that.
When you walked in that office this morning on Sunday morning, what's the first thing you did?
Well, first thing I did was put up a picture of my family. So what I've done, every place I switch jobs, the first thing that goes in my office is a picture of my family. And the first thing that goes up in any house or townhouse or condo that I buy is a picture of my family. So that's the first thing I did. The second thing I did is start looking where to put all my stuff, like the detail. When you switch jobs, and people might not find this interesting or amusing, but I do. The details when you switch jobs. Okay, so I have one house key on my car keys in Toronto. One house key, that's it. I have a pass to get into sports, not a pass to get into hockey night, but I have one key on the rink. I'll show you my key ring now. When you work for a team, you get keys to your office at the big rink, keys to your office at the practice rink. And so you got to find where everything is. You got to learn how to drive there. So I had to drive to the game last night. First time driving the game, figure it out. The first night someone picked me up. And so then you got to figure out where your office is. And then you got to figure out, okay, which keys where, how do I walk to the press box to watch the game from here? So there's all these myriad details from work, and then your personal life. So I got to find a place to live. You got to open a checking account, and they're all little things, but they're time consuming and they're important.
Well, and I know exactly where you're staying, across the street from the practice rink there too. I hope they're looking after you.
Yeah, it's a furnished apartment about a mile away, so I'm not far from where you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you good luck, and we're happy for you if you're happy, and you seem to be. And it is, as you said, a tremendous opportunity. And with a little luck and a little time and a little more.
Hold on, you're not saying goodbye, are you?
Yeah, I was.
No. I got a question.
Go through this every
Okay,
time. Berkey.
I know.
As
So-
soon as I start, I wait.
I
and
know.
you gotta throw something else.
Bob does these podcasts thinking he has somewhere else to go. He has nowhere else to go. So Brian, and I preface this again by saying I learned this from Scotty Bowman. Scotty was a really tough guy to work with when he was in Montreal and when he was in Buffalo. And then he came and worked for Hockey Night. And then from then on, he was a different guy because I think he understood what we were trying to do in television. Has your appreciation and understanding of the dark side changed after your 2 years in television?
No, you forget, John, I did a year back in 04, 05.
Oh, that's right.
So I worked for a station who shall remain nameless.
No, you worked for TSN. You worked for TSN and you did a little CBC work.
So I did the draft for TSN, and then I went to work for the CBC for the World Cup.
Right.
And then I went back and did labor town commentary for TSN
Right.
and loved it.
Yeah.
And I thought I got better at it. I thought, like everyone else, when you start, I wasn't very good at it. And I worked very hard at getting better at it, saying things more succinctly and saying things directly and trying to be funny once in a while. And I thought I got better at it. So going back, I've always appreciated the media. I have fights with people in the media who I think are ignorant or go after one. Usually 9 times out of 10, it's they go after my player or my coach. So very seldom will you see me go on a rant about something someone wrote about me because I don't care. And the fact that I don't care infuriates them, but I don't care. So I've always been professional with the media as long as they're professional with me.
Are you an alternate governor? Will you go to the governor's meetings?
To be determined, I think so.
Okay.
I think I will be, but I'm not. And if I'm not, that's fine too.
No, I wanted, because I mean, you have never, having been in governor's meetings that you've been in, you have never been shy to voice opinions, and just wanted to know whether the rest of the league needed to be prepared for that too. So,
well, that's up to Mr. Morehouse. So we'll see.
By the way, you've smiled a lot in this interview today. You've done a good job smiling today.
Yeah, well, I do it once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while. That's good. I'm done now, Bob.
Thank you very much, Berkey.
Thanks for coming, Bob.
And thanks for being with us, Mr. Burke, and we'll see you down the road. If the creek don't rise, we'll have a beer one of these days.
Okay, thanks, Bobcat.
Brian Burke on the podcast today.